Oh my God. Everyone is coming in here to fucking post this. I know, chatters. I know. Here, let's get the CNN.
10 minutes ago, we received a statement from the personal office of former President Joe Biden announcing that Biden had been diagnosed on Friday with what they describe as an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. I want to read you that full statement. It says, last week, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer characterized by a Gleason score of 9 with metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone-sensitive, which allows for effective management. The statement goes on to say that Biden and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Of course, former President Biden is 82 years old, and there was so much scrutiny around his mental acuity and physical fitness to serve a second term back in July of 2024 during the presidential campaign. Of course, the former president ultimately dropping out of the race after that debate. And of course, all of that is the subject of a brand new book from our colleague Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson out this month that is really generating a lot of headlines, as well as the release of audio tapes from the former special counsel Robert Hur, audio of the president struggling to recount certain dates and names. But of course, this is a somewhat optimistic diagnosis. They say the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, allowing for effective management. But of course, it is quite serious if it has spread to his bones. Again, they're describing it as an aggressive form of prostate cancer, Frederica. We have reached out to the White House for comment from the Trump administration on this development and waiting to hear more from President Biden and his family as the time goes by.
Right. All of those words seem to be very alarming, but then like you mentioned, the statement being pacified by some optimism of a type of treatment that might be available. I know you're going to continue to do some reporting, and we'll check back with you. Thank you so much, Betsy Klein, for helping to break that news. All right, our Dana Bash is also on the line with us. And so, Dana, from the information that Betsy is just conveying, that this prostate nodule was discovered, do we know anything about a history?
Well, now he can be in charge of the oversight committee, you know?
Problems or nodules prior to this diagnosis that is now being announced and shared that this is an aggressive form of prostate cancer?
Hi, Frederica. Not that we know of. Look, when you're talking about a president, a former president, and his medical health, we theoretically should know a lot, if not everything, about it. So if there was a history that he personally had, we, would likely know about it. And, listen, as you know, I mean, we all have people in our families who, particularly men of a certain age, who get tested regularly for prostate cancer. And as we saw in this statement, they get a Gleason score, and that determines whether or not they have prostate cancer, and if so, how aggressive it is. Like Betsy said, the thing that clearly is very concerning is that it is spread to his bones. But look, this is also a man who has had a son who died from cancer. Now, former President Biden says that they believe that the reason Beau Biden got cancer, very different kind of cancer, brain cancer, was because of exposure to burn pits while on a military mission. We never know, and we won't know if that's, for sure 100%. But what we do know now is that the former president is very lucky in this sense. He has the best care that pretty much anyone could get. And there's no question that he is going to be, they're going to find the best care, as they say in the statement. And the idea, as you were saying, Fred, that it seems to be the kind of cancer that would respond to hormones, that's a very, very big deal, regardless of whether or not it is in his bones or not.
All right, I think we lost that signal with Dana Bash. We'll try to reestablish. Thank you so much, Dana. Also with us, David Axelrod. David, I mean, this is striking, shocking news. Yes, he is of a certain age, 82, and prostate-related problems can certainly arise at about this stage of life, but that his diagnosis, according to that statement, would come on Friday, and it with the use of aggressive form of prostate cancer, hormone-sensitive, but still
I can't wait for the liberals to talk about how fucked up the left is for saying they don't care, myself included, that we don't care that Biden has prostate cancer.
President Biden, as you guys pointed out, Jake and Alex's book just came out. It's getting a lot of attention, a lot of reflection on his decision to run again, and that the rehashing of all of that can't be pleasant for him. But this supersedes all of that, obviously, and you know he's not a stranger to medical crises. He dealt with 2 brain aneurysms earlier in his life, and almost lost his life as a result of that, and was able to soldier through that. He obviously has experienced a lot of tragedy in his life as well, with the loss of 2 children, one by car accident, and his wife, his first wife, and of course the death of his son, Bo. Joe Biden is the unluckiest lucky man on the planet. He's lived an incredible life of service. 50 years of it, but he's also experienced untold tragedy. And I just, whatever your political persuasion, whatever your feelings are about how his career ended, whatever you think, this is a good and decent man who has served his country, and we're all pulling for him.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this comes at a time where there was so much and continued attention, placed on his mental acuity and stability, as well as ahead of this book release. And you mentioned there's been a lot of discussion about it. His medical condition now, his announced medical condition now, do you believe that silences or delays a lot of conversations about his, last year and a half of his presidency for now?
Yeah, well, I think those conversations are going to happen, but they should be more muted and set aside for now as he's struggling through this.
I thought it was curing cancer, not getting it, dude. What happened? He said he was going to cure cancer, Jack.
It shouldn't be stunning because prostate cancer is so common among men at his stage in life. Most men, if they live long enough, deal with prostate cancer. But and it's great news that they think that it's manageable, but jarring nonetheless. The thing, Fred, is that people who serve in these offices, they sort of become embedded in our lives, and and this is a reminder that that no one's immortal, and so it's jarring. And I had the opportunity to serve with Vice President Biden for 2 years in the White House.
I can't believe that he's the one who got it, and not like Dick Cheney and everybody else too.
The concerns about health, Bo's health. Later on, when I was working as a consultant to the campaign, Bo's health came to the fore, and I just feel for the family, because it's one more thing.
Why do they glaze him so much even now? What do you mean, dude? This is the primary directive of mainstream news, is to whitewash and launder the reputation of war criminals once they are on the verge of death or after they pass.
Anna Navarro, who
it's a major part of how this works.
Former President Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, were on The View last week. Anna, jarring is the word that David Axelrod just used. How would you describe how this news hits, given that yours was one of the last big interviews with him last week ahead of his diagnosis?
Look,
So
I
jarring.
think jarring is the word that
Jarring is the
applies
word.
to anybody,
He's
any
already
family
dead.
that
He's
gets the
basically
news
been propped
that
up.
somebody you love or you
He's
have,
basically been propped up with a stick
have
up his
cancer.
ass that
It's, you know,
keeps
it's
his
always
spine
jarring when you
erect
hear that
for the
diagnosis.
past
Fred, it's
multiple
happened in my
years at this
family.
point. What do you mean? He's been
And,
dead. What are we
you know,
talking
it
about?
comes with fear. It comes with
It's not jarring.
uncertainty, wanting to figure out what the plan is, what the next steps are, what the possibilities are for treatment. I mean, there's so many questions that come with that one diagnosis. I will tell you, one of the things that I know Joe Biden has going for him is his very strong faith, his incredible optimism.
His brain is
And
doo-doo.
also
He doesn't
this-
even know
this
what any of this
family,
is.
Strength of family that have gone through so much together. He's got a loving wife of decades and decades and decades. They have gone through so many ups and downs. He's got children and grandchildren, a sister, just such a wide array of people who love him and will be with him at a time like this. And I think it's part of the recent Bo's cancer, the accident with his first wife that cost the life of his first wife and his baby daughter. It's part of the reason why Joe Biden is a compassionate, decent man that we know. And it's part of the reason why he doesn't lose his optimism, because he knows that from sometimes the depths of sorrow and the biggest
He's
challenge,
neither a compassionate nor a
will
decent man.
emerge.
This is
So look,
bullshit.
the Joe Biden we
He's
saw-
neither a
I saw
compassionate nor
couple weeks
decent
ago on The
person.
View, the Joe Biden I've known for almost 3 decades
I gotta
is a
pee.
man who I know will fight. Is a man who will have people who love him in his corner. Is a man who will have the best medical advice. And these are things that he does not take for granted, because he knows not every American has the best medical advice and the best medical treatments available. And he knows not every American has the family structure that he has. And I think that's why he tried so hard to bring health care to Americans, and why time and time again we saw him show his heart to America. We saw him hug people who had diagnoses like this. We saw him hug family members who had lost somebody because of everything he has gone through. So, I just join, I think, most Americans, hopefully all Americans, in praying for him and wishing him well, and knowing that prostate cancer today, many forms of prostate cancer are very treatable, and you can have many more years of life afterwards. I have dealt with it in my family, and I know Joe Biden hasn't given up his entire life. He's not going to give up now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you talk about his strength in his faith and in his family. He's a devout Catholic. Jill Biden was there on the set with him as he joined you and the other ladies on The View. I mean, speak to me about, about your recollection, even during that interview, of how I just remember one moment where she really stepped in and chimed in to help underscore, his commitment to public service and his record, and his record to truth. Talk to me about what that moment was like as she, not necessarily completing his sentences, but trying to complete the narrative of who Joe Biden is.
Well, I think a lot of us who are married know that it's not infrequent for spouses to complete each other's sentences. I also think Jill Biden is Joe Biden's strongest advocate, unconditional love of so many decades. And I think, I think the last year, all of the attacks on him, the gossip, the suppositions, all of these things, I think were very hurtful to her as a wife, as a spouse who supports and loves her husband. And so, I think that's what you saw come out. And I think we've all seen Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has been a public servant his entire adult life, my entire adult life, Since I've been in this country, Joe Biden has been part of the arena. He's been in the Senate. He's been a vice president. He's been a president. And I think we've all seen him age. I've known him. I am a friend of Joe Biden's, and I have known him for 25, 30 years. And certainly the man who was at The View 2 weeks ago is not the man that I knew 20 years ago. We've seen him age. We've seen his steps become more faltering. We've seen his voice lose some of his strength. But throughout all of it, it's always been the same good, decent public servant, committed to America, committed to democracy.
Yeah, Connor clocked
Joe
it,
Biden,
dude. We got Joe Biden dying before Grand Theft Auto 6.
Anna Navarro, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your viewpoint here as we're all just learning of this announcement coming from former President Joe Biden's office that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. That diagnosis coming on Friday, and in that statement saying that it is
Olivia Juliana crashing
Anna,
out
for joining us, and that his diagnosis is a hormone-sensitive condition which does allow for
she's saying
management.
She's crashing out and saying all those who spent the past week shaming him have been shaming the man with cancer instead of the felon deporting children with cancer. First of all, people didn't even know that he had cancer. And secondly, that his cancer diagnosis doesn't change the dynamic at all. His selfishness and his interest in the continuation of dead Palestinian children unironically contributed to the Trump victory. So if you hate the orange man, and if you say orange man bad, you have to remember that Joe Biden's ineptitude and his selfish interest in maintaining his grip of power is directly responsible for orange man winning power, okay? There is no like, wow, I hope you feel good about yourself. Like, yeah, dude, I don't feel good. You want to know why I don't feel good? Because there is no karmic justice on this planet. There is no justice whatsoever, and there's certainly no karma, no karmic justice whatsoever, because Joe Biden has seen the entirety of his life. He went all the way up into his 90s. He actually became the president. He oversaw some of the worst American foreign policy decisions. He oversaw the undermining of international rule-based order directed by Joe Biden himself. So much death and so much destruction. And he opened up the floodgates of Donald Trump for a second term. So no, I don't care that he got prostate cancer at the age of 90. Okay? Get the hell out of here. And this is before we even talk about his track record leading up to his election.
This far advanced, meaning Gleason 9 metastasized to the bone, the 5-year survival rate is somewhere between 30 and 40%. Again, depending on how well he responds to therapy. One of the questions on everyone's mind, and you just heard this from the reporter, is what about last year's PSA? You know, this was found by physical examination, by a prostate exam. A lot of times we find an elevation in prostate-specific antigen, a PSA, and then we go after it, get an MRI. I mean, he must have had the best possible care here. I'm a little taken aback that it's this far advanced and very, very concerned about it.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you. This is a former president of the United States. He's supposed to be getting, as you say, the best medical care in the world. And yet, you know, just a few months after he leaves office, this prostate cancer is advanced enough that it has metastasized to the bone. That's just not good.
No, and then we don't have enough information for me to be sure of the following statement, but I want everyone to know that the PSA, though, I think it's a really great test, and I do it on every male over the age of 45. Sometimes it can be low, and you still could have this. It's not 100%. I'm not saying his was low. It wasn't written as I don't recall it being indicated there. But if it's high, you go after it. And again, to reach the point of symptoms, we most of the time we can diagnose it before. Although, you know, it may very well be that he's hormone responsive, and that's what...
As a casual lurker, I will have to step away from you. Your level of crassness is worth unsubscribing. Oh no. Only logged in to let you know I think you're very researched, opinionated, politically astute, and extremely crass. Yeah, don't worry. Goodbye.
At this point.
It is, as you say, one of the most treatable forms of cancer, but you have to catch it fairly early, right?
Well, you have to catch it fair. If you catch it while it's still within the capsule, within the prostate itself, it's curable most of the time. When it's metastasized, like here to the bone, much less so. And again, this aggressive, very, very concerning, means that it probably spread pretty fast. They might try to radiate that lesion they found on the bone. They're definitely going to give hormone therapy here. They'll know more in a few months about how responsive it is. When the goal is to get it before it leaves the prostate. When it's left the prostate, it becomes much more difficult to cure.
Dr. Siegel, stay with us for just a moment. We want to check in with senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. Peter, obviously, you were there at the White House for the full run of the Biden administration. Are you as surprised as I am at this news regarding the former president?
That is because every week that passes makes it all that more, all the more less likely for him to be off the ballot. Okay? He is trying to crawl, not towards the finish line being November 5th. He's trying to crawl to the convention. Remember, these are some of the dirty tricks that this war criminal old man pulled off in an effort to ensure that there wasn't enough time to replace him. Okay? When his brain was dookie, him and all of the people surrounding him, actively tried to make sure that he could go, he could basically make it to the next step in the process so that no one could replace him, so that he would be the one who runs against Donald Trump. And being November 5th, he's trying to crawl to the convention, which is so fucking gross. Once people recognize that reality, I suspect they'll be a little bit more angry. I don't think people have noticed that yet. I've been saying this now since the debate. He is literally trying to desperately get to the convention so it becomes a matter of it's not even a question at that point. Because every day that passes by where Joe... Is it just me, or are you being way less crass than you could be? Yes, I am. I'm being way less crass than I normally would be because I know that a lot of liberals are going to be in their fifis and they're going to turn around and look for anyone to yell at that they possibly can to try and position themselves as the real anti-Trump people, not realizing that their actions, the actions of Joe Biden, led to Donald Trump. They just don't want to recognize that, because then the party that they maintain loyalty to will be the wrong party here. That's it.
Do you think that Joe Biden really would have been able to perform as president all the way through January 2029 when he would be 86?
Yes, I thought that back then. I still think that, but I don't know that. When people ask me, did I know this or did I know the other? And the fact of the matter is, no, I didn't. And you make my point here. So it's not all about age. I've seen people develop Alzheimer's when they're in their 30s and 40s.
Ay, ay, ay.
So it's not about age. It's about the ability to do the job. And I never saw anything that allowed me to think that Joe Biden was not able to do the job. Just that simple.
The debate didn't make you concerned about whether or not he could do the job?
Absolutely it did. I never saw any of that. I didn't see the tapes from her interview. And I watched that debate. And you and I talked about it. And yes, I was concerned. Now, the question is this a condition or is this an incident? And I have had incidents when I was looking for my glasses and had them on.
Yeah, bro, you should also quit. What are we doing? Yes, you are also entirely too old.
So you have these kinds of incidents, and that's the question is. And then remember, a lot of us were a bit concerned about his schedule in the run-up to the debate. He took 2 overseas trips, came back, and started preparing for that debate. And I called it at the time preparation overload, because they were cramming into a 4 or 5 day period the preparation for this debate after taking 2 overseas trips, which I thought was taxing in and of itself. And so these kinds of concerns are out there, but none of us thought that there was anything here that created any suspicions of any prolonged condition.
Are you scared of being yelled at by liberals, or do you find some value in being more tempered? You fell off, Onk. I don't care. I'm tired and I'm angry, and I don't think that him getting cancer is even justice, okay? It is not even a fraction of what Joe Biden deserves. Okay? That's it. And now everyone is going to act like he's already dead. Our campaign bent over backwards to accommodate them. The VP broke on Biden with Gaza. She met them. Senior leadership met with them. Uncommitted leadership told us they knew the VP was better than Biden and Trump, but they needed to win so they could rationalize their antics. Yeah, this guy is former director of rapid response for Kamala Harris, formerly delivering words on behalf of Joe Biden, still defending the Kamala Harris campaign. Joe Biden, outside of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, Joe Biden is perhaps the second most responsible party for Donald Trump. Okay? Kamala Harris is a close third, and her campaign is a close third, but Joe Biden is literally the second most responsible party for Donald fucking Trump. So if you hate Donald Trump, as I do, you have to recognize that reality. If you don't recognize that reality, you are deluding yourself.
Try to keep himself as healthy as possible. He had a trainer that was coming over to the White House twice a week or something like that. In the morning, he had to get special permission to use a Peloton because of the network. They don't like to have extra Wi-Fi networks in the residence of the president, and so it is a very sad diagnosis. And it's worth pointing out, he just formed a personal office. We didn't hear anything from them for the first couple months.
Who's the most responsible party for Donald Trump? Obviously, Donald Trump is most responsible, and the Republican Party is most responsible for Donald Trump. He is Donald Trump himself. But the second most responsible party in this situation is Joe Biden, due to his ambition, due to his horrible management, due to his lack of interest in stepping aside. He did this. We're talking about Trump 2 chatters. We're not talking about fucking Hillary Clinton. Okay? That already happened. Hillary Clinton already did this once. Living in the aftermath of that disastrous consequence of Trump 1, the Democratic Party should have recognized the real threat that Trump 2 presents, as I did, as many others did, and forced Biden out, forced Biden to step aside. But instead, they propped up Biden at a time when myself and many other people could see that he was senile, all the way back in 2019, all the way back in 2020. There were people who actually rang the alarm bells, if you remember. People like what's the Texas guy? Castro. It was here. Look at this.
Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered.
September 12, 2019. Here you have Julian Castro literally questioning Biden's senility. in 2019.
My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be in for it.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
Yeah, they packed his ass up for that, by the way. The Democratic Party and its machine is so nefarious that they saw this as a major threat to the one guy that actually was saying the truth on that stage, because they saw Biden as the only option to rally around, against Bernie. They were so terrified. Of Bernie Sanders potentially coming out of that primary as the victor and having to change the trajectory of the Democratic Party in a way that actually is progressive, in a way that moves towards an ambitious social democratic expansion of welfare and social safety nets, that instead of that, they literally turned around and they were like, we have to do everything we can to make sure that this does not happen. And Brandon was the guy that they presented as the alternative. He had the name recognition. He was Obama's vice president. He was the best possible person to do this. And the media offered multiple billions of dollars worth of organic and native advertising after a predictable victory that came in from South Carolina. All of this played a role in Biden actually seizing tremendous victories on Super Tuesday, changing the tide of the primaries. They all knew he was old and decrepit, and yet they still pushed him. They still pushed him aggressively, and then they maintained this idea that Biden was perfectly fine, and he had incredible motivation. He was not senile. His brain was totally fine. Here's Matt Stoller correctly pointing out, Democratic insiders know Biden has cognitive decline issues. They joke about it. They don't care. Near attendant, this is beneath you. Block. Folks, this is the only way to handle this nonsense. The Sanders outreach continues, I see. I wonder why you're losing. Kana continued, in light of what has come out, it is painfully obvious President Biden should not have run. He said his party played too much deference to party leaders, not to the old guard, to the advisors, and needed to be more independent. Yeah. The Democratic Party played the role that it always is supposed to play, the role that it's perhaps most equipped to play, which is to present a real hurdle against any sort of real left politics. They did that. They shut off any kind of ambitious social democratic option because that was terrifying for them. And in that process, Biden mismanaged the country and Biden mismanaged the country, was a horrible communicator at a time when there needed to be a uniting figure. Pair that up with negative real wage growth for almost 2 years under the Brandonian leadership, and also to perfectly tie that up with the endless genocide of the Palestinian population in real time that every American could see, and a genuine inability to address such problems, a genocide that we are actually paying for with our tax dollars. Biden oversaw all of that, refused to drop out, refused to recognize the writing on the wall, and handed the keys of the castle to the Republicans.
To his lifestyle and his maybe condition or feeling, I guess you could say, versus some that are a little more uncomfortable. Can you take us through those, Doctor?
Well, as I was saying, taking the prostate out has now reached a proportion where it's very much easier. You can do it without blood loss usually through a robot through a small incision in the abdomen and remove the whole prostate with robot arms in a matter of an hour or two. And recovery, you could even go home the next day or even the same day. That's dramatic improvement. On top of that, radiation has gotten a lot more pinpoint and better tolerated. You can get a lot of irritation from radiation, but it's totally different than it used to be, and they might want to radiate the bone. In terms of hormone treatment, since the White House has already revealed that that it's hormone responsive, which to me means they think it will respond to anti-testosterone treatments, including Lupron and maybe Casodex. That is good news in that they expect it to be able to shrink and to shrink the metastasis. The other potentially good news is they didn't seem to find it anywhere else. So the biggest side effects I worry about with the Lupron or with the anti-hormone therapy is fatigue. It causes a lot of fatigue, and I'm concerned about pain from that metastasis. I'm concerned about the urinary symptoms he's currently experiencing. He could go into urinary retention. But they may be able to prevent that by treating quickly.
Ironically enough, he should have been on finasteride, is correct, considering his fucking hairline and how abysmal it is. Not exactly sure why he wasn't already on finasteride, as your boy is. Finasteride is FDA approved for your hairline, but it also, its primary function is to shrink your prostate to avoid prostate cancer.
Private docs. There is not a consensus whether to do a PSA over the age of 80 from either the American Urological Association or the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force. They tend to recommend against it in such an elderly person. I believe in it. I always do it in elderly people because my philosophy towards medicine, John, is I want to know what's going on so I can figure out how to pursue it. You know, you don't have to biopsy everyone based on a number, but the number is good to know. I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting he did or didn't have that test, but that is a useful test.
I am clearly not a doctor. That's why we're talking to you, Dr. Siegel. But when the statement says that the cancer appears to have metastasized to the bone, that sounds kind of ominous to me. I mean, bone cancer, I know, can be very painful. If it's in the bone, can you stop it?
Well, hopefully they could stop it if it's so testosterone dependent by the hormone therapy and hopefully by radiation. The 5-year survival rate when it's this far spread, and that's not even including how aggressive it is 30 to 40%. We wish it were a lot higher than that. You know, that's with the most modern treatments available. I wouldn't say it's ominous, but I'd say it's very, very concerning and clearly a life-threatening situation.
All right. Dr. Mark Siegel, our Fox News senior medical analyst. Thank you. Let's bring in Jeff Mason, the White House correspondent for Reuters. Jeff, again, it's been less than 4 months, I believe, if I'm counting on my fingers right, since Joe Biden left the White House, and now we're getting this pretty surprising diagnosis of prostate cancer that has metastasized. Your thoughts?
Well, number one, heartbreaking for the former president and for his family. And so, you know, I think even if you're a neutral reporter who's covered a president or anyone, you would extend your sympathies and best wishes to them. And I certainly do. I think from a political angle, it will absolutely, when you set aside the realities of the health issues that he is now dealing with, which is private, but also a story as a former president, it will also raise questions again about his decision to run for re-election. A lot of those questions were focused on his mental acuity, but just his age, of course, also means
don't fucking scale back on this, dude. This is the Reuters White House correspondent. Okay, this person obviously Fox News is biased on this, but they're correct.
Some of those conversations, just as some of those have been rehashed in the recent days, as new
the
books
person
about
speaking is not biased.
Come out.
Yeah, and as the conversations that he had with special counsel
but the
Robert
news
Hur
programming are
released, there have been calls, especially among Republicans, for an investigation into, you know, who knew what about the president's condition, because clearly he wasn't answering questions well in those snippets of audio that have been released. Do you think that this diagnosis in any way changes the equation? Does it bring more sympathy forward for the former president and cause people to just kind of say, well, let's back off a little bit?
I think it's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but certainly I think the American people and people in general, when they see somebody facing a diagnosis with this, have sympathy. And I'll be interested to watch how that sympathy manifests itself in terms of how people respond on Capitol Hill from both parties. And certainly to your question, if there's a response on the Republican side that is more sympathetic and leading to backing off from the investigations that you were just referring to, then that would be a notable change.
Obviously, most of us get physicals each year. I get an annual physical. Maybe you do as well. For a president, Dr. Siegel was saying that his last annual was in 2024. I mean, is it an annual event for the president, or do they consider doing it more often for the most powerful person in the world?
It is absolutely an annual event. That doesn't mean you don't get checkups more often. And certainly the President of the United States has a doctor traveling with him, as far as I know, at all times. I mean,
remember a month ago when an article came out saying that Biden wanted to help Dems and they avoided him? Now they have to address this against their will because they do not want to be associated with them. That's how bad a decision he made.
Happens once a year, and it happens at once.
I think Democrats should be ruthless and be like, yeah, he was... Like they shouldn't be. I mean, they are going to use flowery language to whitewash and launder his reputation. But this article almost certainly came out after his diagnosis. The Bidens want back in? No, that is insane. No way. Do we know exactly when the diagnosis came out? Because that is so psychotic. If he knew he had like prostate cancer and he's still like, I'm coming back in, Jack. I'm sick. I'm sick in the head.
Like these are appropriate for politics. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. I mean, we're all human beings, and we feel for the former president because a diagnosis of cancer, especially cancer that appears to have spread, is very sobering and certainly very disturbing, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely, and I fully agree with you about that sympathy.
Launch
and
me
I would
into the
extend mine
suburbs,
again too.
Jack.
It's not something you want to see happen to anyone, be they a leader in public life.
Yeah, it's just like it's yet another idiotic moment where the Democrats will look so silly, will look so stupid if they entertain this, especially because that association will continue with Biden, and that association will remind average Americans what they saw and the inconsistency of what they heard from the Democrats in terms of Biden's fucking brain processing power. This is why I'm saying, like, just say, oh, it's cancer is really mean and really sad, and then leave it at that. If you talk about how wonderful of a statesman he was, then all of a sudden you're just going to keep reminding people. You're all of a sudden going to keep reminding people that, like, you defended his fucking diminished capacity. And it only further, it only serves as further evidence that you are an unserious person, only interested in maintaining your grip of power. Kamala would have become president if he had run and won, if he died in office. I'm not so certain about that either. CNN says the 16th article was 2 months ago. Yeah, no, I don't. The article doesn't match up with the timeline. He said that, and then he found out that he has cancer. That's what happened.
The oldest former living president until he passed away just a few months ago. He experienced amazing health, but not everyone is that lucky. And Joe Biden's mother was very, had a very long life, and he's been very healthy.
You talking about people remembering, but how many people remember Trump's lies, though?
And for him
Dude,
to address.
You have to remember, the people that are pro-Trump don't give a shit that he's lying. They're stupid, and they're in a fucking cult. Okay? We're talking about independents. We're talking about, like, average Americans, people who don't vote, and people who do vote, but for the Democratic Party, even if they hold their nose and vote. Okay? There is no way to convince the Republicans. Who cares what they think? They're an insane death cult at this point. They look at the way they handled the tariff stuff. Look at the way they operated within the tariff shit, where they would regularly turn around and be like, nah, it's actually tariffs are awesome. Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, now that you took away the tariffs, art of the deal, baby. Like, you can't have a normal conversation with these people. You can't have normal expectations from these people. They are fucking insane. It's also a problem that is plaguing the Democratic Party. Age and the diminished capacity of the elderly in the gerontocracy that is the Democratic Party is legitimately one of the most visible parts of this party. That's what's so crazy about it. Like, it's one of the Democrats, I always say, have a crisis in branding because they don't have any sort of discernible policies that you can point to in the way that, like, Bernie does, right? Bernie's old as fuck too. Absolutely worst double bind here, where they show that Biden willfully retained classified documents and comes across too senile for a jury to convict him. The right will make mincemeat out of this. They'll play up the double standard in courts and harp on how old Biden is. Yeah, this was when the Robert Hur report first came out. That's what I said, and that's precisely what the Republicans did, by the way. The Democrats are in a crisis of branding, if you are to look at it in sociopathic terms, I guess. Okay? Their branding crisis revolves around their lack of interest in being associated with any sort of real progressive policies that they genuinely are pushing for. But then outside of that, this is the type of shit that they're associated with. Just like defending old people because they're in power, with the Dianne Feinsteins of the world, with the Brandons of the world, you know? Is terrible.
Out of the presidential race, of course, he has contended that he believes he was indeed fit to serve. And I want to read to you a little bit from a letter from his former physician.
Yeah, you only predict them correctly because they get their ideas from right here. Yeah, I'm a Republican opposition research merchant.
He has sleep apnea, which is being treated. He has non-valvular fibrillation. He's being treated for high cholesterol as well as acid reflux and seasonal allergies. Of course, we have asked the White House, the Trump administration, as well as a spokesperson for Dr. Biden, the First Lady, for comment and reaction to this concerning news. Some signs of optimism, of course, that this type of prostate cancer can be responding to, it appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. But again, quite concerning that it has.
She's 87. This was who was going to.
The former president has maintained a relatively
leader of the
low
House
profile
Oversight
since
Committee.
leaving office in January, but we have started to see him
After the
reemerge
previous
on the
one,
world stage. He attended
after the previous one, literally had cancer and couldn't do his job because of cancer. Remember, Nancy Pelosi actively undermined AOC's chances of being the leader of the House Oversight Committee. And the Democrats listened to Speaker Emeritus.
Curing cancer is something that is so near and dear to the former president.
From her
Back
hospital
during
bed,
the
Nancy
Obama
Pelosi pushed
administration,
for
after
it.
His son, Beau Biden, died of glioblastoma and aggressive brain cancer. The then vice president established the Cancer Moonshot, which was an initiative with a goal of ending cancer as we know it. It was reestablished in 2022. So again, very concerning news, some signs of optimism, but we will be tracking this quite closely, reaching out to all of our sources, Jessica, and bringing you the latest updates as we get them.
Yeah, and Betsy, again, just underscoring, this is breaking news. We're still seeing this all kind of play out. But what about public support for the former president? I noticed some people are starting to make public comments on this.
Yeah, we are starting to see an outpouring of public support. Again, we haven't heard anything just yet from the White House. We have asked for reaction, but we are going to be watching all of these, it's shocking news. And hearing from some of the president's top allies, advisors, former staffers, those that I'm talking to on text message, all exhibiting a lot of shock and concern and really sadness about their former boss, just writ large. Really very concerned about what this news could portend, of course, what his treatment is going to look like and how this is going to progress.
Certainly, yeah, no, this is shocking news, especially for those who are close to him, who've.
Yeah, Piers Morgan is in his feelings. I'm going to block anyone I see, and there's already a lot of this vile crap flying around, mocking, celebrating, or playing partisan politics with Joe Biden's health news. The man has served his country for 50 years and is fighting for his life. Show some bloody respect. Yeah. Yeah, he served his country for 50 years to do what?
Well, first of all, Jessica, my thoughts are with the former president. Anyone who's ever heard a physician tell them that they have cancer understands how uncertain and disorienting and terrifying these times can be. So my thoughts go to the former president and his family. So prostate cancer is extraordinarily common. About 1 in 8 men in this country will get prostate cancer during their lifetime. And the outlook I think depends a lot on the cell type and how responsive it is to hormone therapy. What we've heard so far, sort of bad news and good news. The bad news is that his Gleason score, which is how the pathologists grade the aggressiveness of the tumor by looking at it under the microscope, was quite high. The Gleason score goes from 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst, and his tumor was graded as a 9, so a very aggressive form. The second adverse diagnostic information that we've received is the fact that it's now already metastatic to bone, so it's no longer contained in the prostate. Yeah. So this is not something.
Have some bloody respect. Gaza's last hospital for 10,000 cancer patients shuts down due to reported Israeli strike. Prostate cancer is often treated initially with removing the prostate, but that's not an issue here because the cells have already spread into other parts of the body, and we're told that it's spread to the bone. But there are treatment options. Where the good news is that we're told that the former president's particular tumor appears to be sensitive to hormone therapy. The male hormone testosterone causes prostate cancers to grow. So blocking testosterone is For the record, a lot of people in the chat are saying, well, Palestinians have no access to cancer treatment because of Joe Biden and now Donald Trump, right? And before people say, oh, this is like saying there's starving children in Africa, make no mistake, okay? Biden is directly responsible for that. You are not directly responsible for the gross distribution at a time of food abundance, okay? You are not directly responsible for that. Whereas Biden is almost single-handedly directly responsible for Israel's endless bombing campaign, as he had every opportunity to shut it down early on and refused to do so, so much so that he allowed this election to be lost to Donald Trump.
And I just want to make sure I'm understanding when they say it is hormone sensitive, and that's a good news. You're saying if you can block that testosterone, which is of course a hormone, that can
they're going to block Biden. They're going to force feminize Brandon.
Or they hope for the fact that it would give them a little more control over that cancer.
Yeah, and